Miami's Community News, and our guest today is Senator Annette Taddeo. Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure. I'm delighted to be here.
So you've had a lifelong desire to serve the public,
Yes, I have.
and you have stuck with it when others might have hung it up. What's causing you to stay in the service of taking care of the public?
Actually, it started in college. I came to this country from Colombia all of a sudden because my father was kidnapped, unfortunately, by the FARC, a terrorist group. And I ended up in Alabama, and I went to school in Alabama, high school, and then college. And it was a college experience that made me realize that someday I wanted to run for office and be in public service. And it was that experience where I ran for student government secretary. I put posters all over the school that said Annette Taddeo for secretary. And on the day of the election, as I was walking to go vote, my posters no longer said Annette Taddeo for secretary. They said Annette Taddeo for deportation.
What year was that?
Probably, I graduated college in 1992, so it was probably 1990.
So what did that do inside you?
Look, I was young, but even at that moment, I realized that I could be angry or bitter, or I could allow that moment to inspire me and strengthen me. And that's what I decided to do. And that was the moment when I said, I'm going to run for office someday.
Yeah, and so often people look at that and they use that as the inspiration.
Difficult moments.
Yes. And that's when we learn the most.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. It was a learning, tough lesson. But it really prepared me for understanding that what makes this country so great is the strength of our diversity, and we need to have a diversity of voices at the table, especially the decision-making tables, in order for it to be properly represented.
And the people in South Florida understand that.
Oh, more than anywhere.
More than anywhere else. It's like, this is it. You know, and I grew up here, right? It is what it is, and I'm very happy with it. And when I was very young and Cubans first started coming over in the early 60s, I said to my dad, how is it in a couple of years, these people that are coming here, they're like, it looks like they own banks. They sure own cars and houses. He said, well, Michael, when people come from other countries, they come here because they want more, and they're driven to do that, to find that success.
Yes,
so
we're very entrepreneurial.
Yes, and it's wonderful, and
I am one.
Yes, and you are. So tell us about your business.
Look, I started a business straight after college. It was just me. My parents lost their home with Hurricane Andrew, and that was 1992 when I graduated. I just graduated.
Right about now.
Yes, and
30 years ago.
Their home was completely destroyed. They were right off Old Cutler in Saga Bay. Ooh. So the water came and completely destroyed the home, and of course the wind. And I was going to move to Atlanta and be a Spanish copy editor for CNN en Español. And I was going through my bunch of interviews, and then all of a sudden I found myself with my parents' home destroyed. And I said, I am going back to Miami. I am going to help them rebuild their home. And I drove back to Alabama from Atlanta, where I was doing the interviews, and bought a motorhome, drove it down Florida Turnpike all the way, and parked it in front of their home, which I couldn't figure out which was the driveway because the homes were, those wheels are big, right? And so if you've never driven one, you don't understand, but they're very big. I think you should have a different kind of license for those those vehicles. Anyway, but I did it, and I pulled up in front of their driveway, which again, it was impossible to know which driveway was which because the homes, it just looked like a war zone. But I lived in that motorhome with them for 6 months. It was the first home to be finished in Saga Bay, and the rest is history. That's where I started my business.
So you have some defining moments. You've named two significant events that have helped shape, your future. Yes. And since Hurricane Andrew, and recently, let's talk about insurance. You served on one of the committees.
5 years.
Okay, 5 years on the insurance and
banking and insurance,
insurance committee.
Yes.
First of all, what is that like? And two, what are you going to do should you get elected, all right, in Congress to help us with the gigantic insurance issues that we have, because it's unaffordable. That was a year ago.
Yeah.
Now it's crazy. what's going to happen?
Well, look, this is something that I've actually been talking a lot about is, what are we able to do at the state level? Worked for 5 years to make sure that we brought some balance to this issue, because although the people love to say, oh, we passed a bill and it's going to help lower your insurance, it's not. It's all a lie. The insurance companies are not going to lower your insurance. And we have an insurance crisis in Florida specifically, but we have it all over the country as well, because we're seeing all kinds of issues happening all over the country, whether it's, with all these different issues with water and people's homes being destroyed. So I will tell you, I think that we need a catastrophe fund, that we need to make sure that we have some kind of something for the purpose of all these different areas that we end up anyway with FEMA having to cover. But it's very complicated, and definitely something that I will be working on when I get to Washington.
And one of the things that certainly has happened since COVID, and prior to that, it seems like it was like life was beautiful. Maybe it wasn't, all right? But it sure seems that way as compared to the last couple of years. We have a lot of mental health issues for the kids and for the parents and the family units that are still in crisis. We do a lot of shows on mental health, all right? And it's terrible what's going on.
Yeah.
When you go to Washington, what are you going to do to help the people in your district?
Well, there's lots of things. And again, I think the insurance issue is something that I will continue to work on. My first bill actually had to do with flood insurance, and which is a federal insurance program that is actually not that expensive because it's a federal insurance program. But unfortunately, a lot of people in Florida don't have it because you're not required, and yet we know that this is going to be a major problem should a storm hit and with the flooding that comes with it. So I changed it so that every time you renew or get new insurance, that whoever's selling you that insurance for hurricanes actually has to tell you it doesn't cover flooding. And the insurance companies love to say it's not our fault, it was the water who damaged everything. And I learned that from the 92 experience. So that was one thing. But I will tell you, when it comes to mental health, we have a lot of work to do. We do. And I'm married to a psychologist, Dr. Eric Goldstein. And so mental health is something really, really important to us. And I think that our kids especially have been going through a lot. The fact that they stayed home for so long has affected them tremendously. And I am someone that has been studying all the different over medication and the influence of some of the drug companies that they have in our laws that we pass, including the cost of them and how much this is affecting people, the out-of-pocket cost that people are having to put out. Just for medication, whether it's for mental health or regular medication. I mean, there's the insulin cap that we need to have for everyone. It's fixed for those that have Medicare now with the new bill that was passed in Washington, but we still got to fix it for everyone else. So there's a lot of work to do.
Yes. So, Senator, prior to the pandemic, we all, like Big Pharma, we condemned them. And as soon as the pandemic came, said, can't you work any faster? Right? So we understand that it takes money to fund that. And overall, it seems that system seems to be working okay. But I was thinking the other day, should I go get the third booster? Or should I go get my flu shot, my pneumonia shot, my shingles shot, or monkeypox shot? Right?
Yes.
So there's a lot on our plates. And we see this school year, everybody's pushing to get the kids back into school. Big businesses are saying, no, you need to come back, because of the camaraderie that occurs and the think tanks occur when people together.
Yeah.
And we, I have a granddaughter this big, half her life has been around COVID. And you look and you go, how does that impact them where they could have been in school a little bit more?
Well, and I will tell you, the school just started, and I was one of the parents that was very eager for my daughter to go back. And I am very appreciative to the teachers, because the time that they were home, I was like, oh my gosh, please go back. I don't know, the teachers, we don't pay them enough for sure.
That's yes.
But one of her best friends actually is going back for the first time, and just went back for the first time this week, since they started this week. So for me, when she came to the house and she was telling me, I'm going to school, Annette, it's the first time I've gone to high school, and here they're juniors. So she was out for 2 years, and I was like, oh wow, like that I was thinking of how that affects so much. And there's a lot of kids that are going through that.
Yes, and we see that, and we talked to a lot of the administrators of big schools, and we hear that, and the schools are saying we have these big classrooms, nobody's there in this. But when I've seen with the local, not junior college, community college,
Yeah.
where the online campus has the same ranking as downtown Kendall. So they use it. That's the campus. It's all online. All right. So they're making a permanent place for that. Yet, Ilan is running the show. He's had classes in both.
Yeah.
And when he goes back to the classroom, he's going to see that it is much better for us to socialize and be able to get along. And
of course, I think it's also been hurtful to the elderly. It's been very difficult for them, and I think we're seeing a lot more dementia, a lot more issues because there's been not as much socializing and a little bit scared of their health,
Yes.
understandably so. But I think that is something else that we also need to deal with. We're dealing with a lot of that with our elderly.
Okay, let's look at the water problem that we have here in Miami-Dade County. The county said, hey, listen, we have 120,000 septic tanks, and we want to start to do something about that.
Mhm.
But we need a few $1 billion to fix the pipes underneath.
Yeah.
And the Bay seems to be getting a little better. Our Everglades, take out the pythons, and it'd probably be okay. But what can you do in Washington that you can't do from the state level?
Well, first of all, really in Washington, a lot of the work we do is funding. Let's be real. It really everybody, the local counties, the cities, they need funding in order to do these projects. So it's not just legislation for projects, but it's also getting the funding to get it done. And I've been very good at working across the aisle. I think the proudest I am of everything that I did in my 5 years in Tallahassee, in the minority, I might add, is just the level of respect that I earned across the aisle, not just from Democrats, to the point that the Democrats named me the whip because, I had such good relationships and understanding as to who were the people that I could talk to kill a bill. That could join maybe the Democrats, or who were the Democrats that we were not going to have. So how many do we need to get things done? And I think that's so essential, and it's really missing in Washington. There's a lot of division, and of course there's a lot of division in all of our politics. And it's time that we start electing people that are actually going to work together to get things done for the good of everyone, not a party, not a side, but really coming to the table and getting things done.
So one of the things that a lot of people are not aware of, when you go to Washington or Tallahassee, and there's a pie of money,
Mhm.
and everybody wants to get a piece of it for their constituency,
Of course.
right? And so everybody's pulling in different directions. So you have to be able to be a negotiator with the other side. You have to be able to give and to take, and to say, this is what we want, but this would be okay too,
Yeah.
right? So that takes a certain skill level to be able to do that.
And maybe it's my business background. I don't know, but I will tell you, for example, there was a project that I had for $1 million for Feeding South Florida, for example. And then we knew COVID was about to hit. We were already hearing all the issues. We were wondering if there was going to be some closings happening. And the House kept taking out this budget item, and I kept putting it back in the Senate. And eventually it gets to the point that they just take it out. So then it's done unless you go to leadership. And I was able to go to leadership, Republican leadership, and tell them why I felt this was so important. And that's what I mean about the respect. I told them, I said, look, we have the cruise capital of the world in South Florida. There's going to be a lot of people out of jobs. We already knew that the cruise ships were dealing with.
You're on the board, the tourism board.
Yes,
in Tallahassee.
in Tallahassee, I was on Commerce and Tourism Committee. So all these things, I was like, think about all these people that are going to be out of a job. We are going to have long lines without me knowing that it was really going to happen. We're going to have long lines of people that are going to be looking for food. And sure enough, that's what happened. Every time we would do a food drive, 4:00 in the morning, people were lining up. I mean, it was a very difficult moment, besides the fact that we had an unemployment system that was meant to fail, and that really was meant to treat people who lost their job, not because of their own, but because of what happened. And yet they were locked out. The website would not work. They were not getting their payments. And by the way, this is not a handout. This is, as an employer, I pay for unemployment insurance so that if something happens and they lose their job, not because of a fault of theirs, they get a check to at least make ends meet until things get better. And the government to treat them like losers or people who don't want to go back to work is completely unacceptable. People wanted to work.
So again, the last 2 years, as you know, has been this upside down. How do we get through this? Right. So now this is the other side of that. And
Thank
so,
goodness.
Yes, hopefully it'll balance out. But I think for the most part, we're on our way. We're on our way. So right now, people can still early voting still going on now. Absentee ballot. No, we haven't.
We have drop boxes. Thank
boxes.
Goodness. Let me tell you, I was vice chair of ethics and elections, which, by the way, having a leadership role in the minority when you're in the minority is not easy. But again, because of the respect, they would know that I always fought those voter suppression bills, but that I would actually come with proposals that were, for the betterment of everyone. So really bad bills that they have passed when it comes to voting access were made less bad because I was able to get them to accept some amendments.
It seemed like it was 4 or 5 years ago. People would be in line for hours.
I know.
It was just totally unacceptable.
But they wanted to get rid of the drop boxes because, Democrats started voting by mail. It used to be the Republicans that used to win always vote by mail, but now it's the Democrats, and it's because we signed up so many people. But the drop boxes really help because people realize that the mail sometimes doesn't get delivered on time. So the drop boxes are still there. You can drop them off. I know it's late, and we have an election next Tuesday.
Last day is the 23rd, which is when coming up.
Yes, Tuesday.
And then I see your name recognition is very, very high. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And so you're looking forward to November. And should you get elected, what do you want to get done in your first 6 months?
Well, I think making sure that the budget items, I know that, for example, the mayor of Miami-Dade and the county commission has always been looking for additional funding for transportation. We have a major traffic issue. And so I think transportation funding is going to be a key issue that I'm going to be really fighting for, because if you can dream in the sky of projects, but if you don't get the funding necessary, it's very difficult for those to come to fruition. In addition to that, obviously we have an affordable housing crisis as well. And part of that is because we've had Republicans in power for 20 years, and they've been raiding the Affordable Housing Trust, which is why I tried very hard to make sure that wasn't allowed.
The Bill Sadowski Fund too, right?
Yeah, the Sadowski. That's the Sadowski Fund, and they've raided it for 20 years. And then what do you expect when you don't keep funding it, when it should be fully funded every single year? It eventually becomes a crisis, and that's what we have right now. And the problem is that you have to have a place for the teachers, for the nurses, for the firefighters. You have to have a place for all these people to live, for our economy to work. So it's not just, all these people are coming here and they're moving here and they're buying these expensive houses, and the owners of houses, their value is going up, but then that's not good either, to a point, right? So we all need to realize that we need to have a little bit of everything in order for an economy to function.
So there's the old busway east of US 1. There are $300 million to put in. Local, state, and feds each put up $100 million. So my question, rhetorically, sometimes is: are people going to really go on that? All right, and what do we as a community need to do to get that? I know that the county wants a certain level so they can get the next set of money from Washington.
Yes.
And so today I was watching some of it being constructed. So it should be interesting if people will get out of their cars and go on that. Now, the county is obviously, one of the things they're doing is they're changing some zoning that's near there to allow for actually less cars. So you'll take that.
Yes.
Right. I know there's a long-term projects, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years.
But it's not just that project. There's also the fact that we have a real problem with sea level rise. We have climate change happening, and we're ground zero. And you have to start thinking not just of how are you going to make sure that those roads don't end up underwater, make sure that the infrastructure we have and that we have enough on the bay in a way that helps us to avoid the flooding of the cities and the county. In addition to that, we have the elderly community who don't have the resources to weatherize their homes. So that is something that I'm very concerned about and that I want to prioritize, because I don't want them to lose their home. I want them to weatherize it, which will reduce their insurance. And weatherize means you're able to change your windows. You're able to make sure that your roof is the latest up to date. All these things that allow you to be able to show the insurance that your house will withstand the stronger storms that we are getting. And all of that will lower your insurance, but it will also prepare and raise the value of their home for their net worth. That is, that's usually most people have, is their home. And so I want to make sure that those who don't have the resources have the ability to be helped as well, so that it's not just those that have resources.
So one of the plans that the Army Corps of Engineers came up with, allegedly, was this massive change on Biscayne Boulevard on the bay side, which seemed to be structures. Whether it's that or another one, what are we going to do so that every time there's not a heavy rain at the same time that the high tide is there in the short term, meaning the next 5 years or 10 years?
Yeah, because it's happening now.
Yes, and it's like, what is the next step? And we know Miami Beach has got all these things. I live in horse country. Fortunately, I had flood insurance 2 years. It was 10 years ago. Back-to-back floods, up to the toilet tank in the apartment, in the house in the back. Right, for a week, it was that high.
This is what a lot of people don't realize. They think, oh no, but I'm not by the bay. I don't have to worry about it. It's actually worse out west. This is why I was so adamant about making sure that people knew that their hurricane insurance did not cover flooding, because just because maybe you're not in a flood zone doesn't mean you're not going to get flooded. And all you have to do is look at what happened in Texas and see all those houses underwater. It's going to happen here, and we need to be prepared for it. And it does affect the economy when you have every house underwater. It does affect everything. It has a ripple effect.
Tallahassee sometimes interferes with local government. All right. Well, we have
sometimes,
like all the time. All right. So I'm saying, okay, the state is doing to the county, which the county is doing to the cities. And so we watched that roll out. So it depends on that pushback. Miami-Dade County has huge agricultural community. Mm-hmm. Agriculture lives and it dies, all right? Whether it's plants or animals. And for almost all the horse and cattle and agriculture shows at Tropical Park, 50,000 people from dozens of countries from around the world go there. And it's like it's a show. And you can figure which bull you want to get or whatever it is, and it's extraordinary. What can somebody like yourself, if you get elected and you go to Washington, what can you do to help us preserve our agricultural community?
Look, obviously that is, those zoning issues are very county driven and decided by county. But again, I do think that we are better off if we continue to have the healthy food that we need to grow ourselves. And a lot of the problems that we are having with supply chains will be better off if we do things right here, whether it's the chips for our phones or for our cars, or whether it's the food that we grow.
So that's one thing that we learned with the pandemic.
Yes.
All right. And Ukraine and the war in Ukraine.
But it's also healthier.
Yes. So we learn all the things out of all the injustices that have been going on. We need to do more of that here. Yeah. And the chip's a perfect example.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And it's for computers and telephones.
Yeah, you can't buy a car.
Right. Yes.
There are no cars.
And so I'm an advocate for, keeping things green. And I fought for stopping development in horse country. But the county says we either go up or we go out.
Yeah.
But not in my backyard.
Yeah, and everybody.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's certainly, and we understand it's.
But if you're going to go up, you should go up in areas that, again, are transportation hubs, because then you're able to get out of your car. And I will tell you, we are sort of headed that way in the sense that the new generation are not as crazy about cars. And I think because we have Uber and Lyft and all this is a little more it's a little easier to not have to have a car, even if the transportation is not necessarily there. But it's still a tremendous problem, especially for hardworking people who are having to take multiple buses to try to get to work. That and when you don't have them come on time and you can't really measure how long it's going to take, and if you are disabled, it's even worse because many of the ramps on the buses don't work. I have a special place in my heart for the disabled community. Very few politicians talk about it or try to pass laws to help them. I actually think we need to do more because we actually will in the long term save more money if they are more independent and not so dependent on help, and that's what they want. And so whether it is the bill that I passed that is now, by the way, a model for the rest of the country for kids who are autistic or have any disability, it's now their education plan is being done at an earlier age, 7 years old instead of 14 years old, which allows them to really get the training for them to go out in the world and be independent. Look, especially with a lot of these people, back in the day, the parents or their caregiver would outlive them. No more. Like now they're living longer and their caregiver passes away. And so we need them to have their independence, and to those that can, to be able to be trained and feel like part of society, be able to get a job, be able to have transportation. So there are so many things that we can do to truly make everyone's life better.
So a friend of ours started the Friendship Circle almost 15, 20 years ago. They got funding, and it's a Chabad of Kendall and Pinecrest. So they're putting up their new building, right? And they take care of kids that are on the spectrum. And it's also, they get volunteers, mostly kids, to help them. And so it's when we pay attention and take the things from and bring them out of the shadow and bring them to the table so we can have that conversation. So it's not like, what's wrong with them? I remember what we used to say when I was in school about people that were mentally disabled or physically disabled. And you realize they're people,
of
right?
Course.
And so they deserve the respect that they deserve. And then we need to give them that. So here we are, a few days before August 23rd, all right, last day of election, of voting, and then you have another couple months, all right, and November 8th is going to be a big day for you.
Yes.
Tell us again why you want to go to Washington.
I want to go to continue to serve this community. It has really been quite an honor to have done it for the last 5 years. I love what I do, and when the going gets tough, I have been there for my community. And the best thing is when people come to me and tell me, I don't even know sometimes. They tell me the story of calling my office and the great constituent services. People get help. People, they were stuck on something. Like I said, the unemployment was truly a very difficult time for a lot of people. I spend more hours on Spanish radio mostly, but hours taking phone calls from callers, just trying to make sure that they got what they deserved, which was their unemployment. Well, I'll say it again if you wish. But anyway, I really, I think this community deserves a real representative. This is not a reality show. This is people's real lives. We currently have a representative that is not representing this community. Every single vote is against this community. And when you get elected, you don't go there to represent your party. I'm a proud Democrat, and I stand by my values. But you go there to represent everyone. And to be a true representative, you need to make sure that you have that always at the forefront.
What an awesome responsibility you must feel when you go to Tallahassee and thinking about going to Washington. A lot of people are relying on you to speak on their behalf.
Yes.
What is that like for you?
Look, it's really important. You need to stand up for the things that you know your community really needs you to be a fighter. And we're in a very divisive time where it's all extremes and hatred. And frankly, I believe in America. I believe in the goodness of America. And I believe that, yes, we're going through tough times and we need to fight. And just like so many of us on both sides of the aisle fight for example, freedom in Cuba or Nicaragua or Venezuela, we need to make sure that we protect democracy right here, that we really do the things that we need to ensure that we have that beacon of hope for the rest of the world that we are. And in order to do that, we have to have representatives in Congress that are truly representative of our Constitution and not our party that we
I
represent.
think the people want to hear that about to recognize there's a problem that's going on. We need to work together more, all right? And we can put all that stuff aside for a while.
Yes.
Let's work together so that we can have a better America rather than deciding I'm on this side or I'm on that side. Because at the end of the day, pretty much we all want the same things. Want to be healthy, want to take care of our families, we want a nice job or whatever you want to do.
Opportunity.
Right? And so we're about to wrap up here. I'd like you to do two things. One, talk to a young person about their future, all right? And say some positive things about them, all right, and what the next 5 and 10 and 15 years looks like for them. And then then after that, I want you to talk about the upcoming election.
Well, to a young person, I would say, look, it's up to you. It's up to you if we actually can go to school and actually be worried about our test or what we're learning, what you are learning, what kind of grades you're going to get, what you're going to do after school, or actually be worried about whether you're going to make it home alive. And that's the reality of what many of you are going through. And I can tell you, I have been a fighter every step of the way to ensure that my own kid who goes to public school makes it home every night safe, and that they shouldn't have to worry about the things that unfortunately we are having to worry about because we have a gun problem, a real crisis in this country, especially with weapons of war that have no business in the streets. In addition to that, I would say you want to have opportunities to build your American dream. Like I've had that opportunity, but in order to do that, we need to make sure that education is the level playing field and that is available to anyone that wants it and not depending on their zip code. And so that is something else that I have always fought for and will continue to fight for in Washington. And lastly, I will say our environment. We absolutely must have a world where you're going to be able to live in, and we need to have clean water. That should not even be an issue. I can't believe we even have to discuss it, but we do, which is why I have been the fighter that has been fighting against corporations taking our Florida spring water for free to bottle it in those horrible plastic bottles. We should not even do, but we do. And we know that our future wars are going to be about water. And that's the reason why we need to make sure that we elect people that are actually fighting to ensure that we have basic rights of opportunity, freedom, and a clean planet to live in. And lastly, I guess you want me to talk about the election. I will say that I'm very excited about next Tuesday's election. I look forward to having your support so that I can be the nominee. I know that I am the nominee that can beat Maria Elvira Salazar and go toe-to-toe. I've won twice in a district that voted for Trump by 6 points and have been very successful at really taking care of my community and being a true public servant. And that's what I plan on doing in November after I win the seat back to get the representation that our district deserves.
Wow. Senator Annette Taddeo, thank you for being
Thank
here. Congratulations to you. We'll
Thank
see you
you.
on the 24th.
Thank you.
Folks, thanks for joining us again. This is Live with Miami's Community News. Have a